Scheduling groups is hard. Scheduling groups with full-time college students who work part-time jobs and are also active in extracurricular activities and community events is really hard. Hi, my name's Emma Schaefer, and today I'm going to be giving my final presentation for small group communication on scheduling meetings in virtual groups. To begin, we're going to talk a little bit about what we can expect for this presentation. First, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of an overview of what we found from working in a virtual group project, and that will be kind of going into the rubric that we made for this project. And then we'll have a deeper look into the struggles of scheduling virtual group meetings. We'll have more research in this topic, tips from my personal experience, and then we'll sum it up with an overview of what we learned. Next, we're going to go straight into the rubric that we used and a little bit about the application testing with my virtual group. So the rubric that we composed was based on these 5 different categories and then given a score out of 1 through 5 that would give them a total score. The 2 that I think we'd probably focused on the most would be user-friendliness and appropriate context for use. User-friendliness, in my opinion, is one of the biggest categories because I don't want to work with an application or a platform that's going to be really hard to use or hard to understand. And also the column for appropriate context for use, we tested some different applications that just didn't have the right capabilities, whether they weren't web capable or they were only photos or just or didn't have the ability to talk with multiple people at once, just all these crazy different things. So those were the ones that were really important for us to focus on. I mean, they were all equally important, but those we had the toughest time kind of thinking about those in a logical way. But overall, I think that we really enjoyed the rubric that we made because we tried to make it as simple and as accessible as possible. Next, we're going to be going into kind of the 2 main points that I'll be bouncing back and forth with in the rest of this presentation. So this is kind of scheduling meetings, being respectful of other people's times, kind of how they kind of work together. So the first thing, we found that in order for virtual groups and scheduling meetings to be successful, it's vital that you have to be realistic about your time management, meaning giving yourself enough time to do things and also figuring out when are we going to be able to schedule these times and kind of working around your day-to-day schedules. And then the next thing is being respectful of other people's time is really important. There's no reason to get upset if other people have to cancel for a personal reason, things like that. It's really important that we are being respectful of everyone's times, and if something happens and we do need to reschedule, that's not a problem. We'll just work a little bit harder to get that done. Next, we're going to be going into kind of the studying a little bit of what I found with scheduling virtual group meetings. These are the 4 things. College students are busy, and if you have to ask a professor for help, that's okay. I mean, we were almost to that point because it seemed like our schedules were like exactly opposite of each other, but we ended up finding that working like 11:30 at night worked for us. Also, don't be afraid to find alternative ways to talk or meet. If you're sitting in traffic at a baseball game, things that could seem inconvenient at first, you really have to utilize the time that you have. Also, it can't just be one person's responsibility to schedule meeting times for everyone. This seems pretty much like common sense, but not everyone's going to know everyone else's schedule, so it's really important that you are working together in order to find a time that meets, and everyone needs to be a part of that. And then overall, the scheduling meetings was the most difficult aspect that our group faced. On all the different, thinking about all the different things that groups and virtual groups could have issues with. This was pretty much the only thing that was a main issue for us, and it definitely was kind of a pain, but we made it work. Now we're going to be transitioning into a study a little bit of what we found, of what I found when researching scheduling virtual group meetings, and I found 2 Harvard Business Review articles that are really interesting that I'm going to be talking a little bit about. The first was an article that suggests that virtual meetings are more effective use of time rather than face-to-face meetings. And I thought I wanted to include this one because I thought it was really interesting because it was kind of opposite of what a lot of other more traditional articles have portrayed to us, and it went off of these 2 points, that it's an opportunity to build engagement and to build trust and candor among teams. And I didn't really consider this until I looked at it through the lens of, in this modern technological era, this makes a lot of sense that this is kind of the way that we are kind of pushing towards. So we need to make it work and make sure that it is up to par in all ways as face-to-face meetings. The other study from the Harvard Business Review suggests that to effectively build relationships, you must meet with the group physically at the start of the project. And this is something that I was kind of nervous about when we started because I thought I wanted to meet with the group, but then I found that it wasn't necessarily something that we had to do because of the short amount of time that we were working together. But if it was a longer project, I think that would have been helpful. And then the third thing is a quote I found from this source that says, when your team works on vastly different schedules, everyone must compromise. This means some people may need to log in to work extra early on a Monday morning to be able to meet with the rest of the team in their geographical location. So this kind of goes back to that idea that it may be inconvenient, but sometimes you have to do kind of what you have to do in order to make things work. So this is a reference page for the different articles that I used. So next we're going to be transitioning into some of the tips that I have that I will definitely be taking into my next virtual group, whatever that may be, and hopefully other people can get some of these tips and use them. Some of these we kind of talked a little bit about, and others I'm going to touch on now. The ones I haven't really talked about, so scheduling meetings as early in advance as possible in order to accommodate with schedules before a lot of planning happens. And then it's important to go back and check in and make sure that the time still works for everyone. And also trying different platforms and applications to see what's going to work best for your group, even if you're using an application to schedule meetings, for example. Also, some other tips. Be open to working at non-typical hours. We talked about that. Being flexible with other members. Know you might have to make sacrifices, and if necessary, you can meet with other group members and then fill them in at a different time. So to conclude kind of what we've talked about just now, just to sum it up, we talked about the rubric that we used for the virtual group project and how we kind of decided to use it just by what we thought was necessary and what was going to be relevant for us and the applications that we were testing. Then I talked a little bit about what some outside research suggests surrounding this topic. The troubles that my group faced, mostly being the whole concept of scheduling group meetings, and then some tips that I hope that other people can take into the future group work, virtual group work, and I definitely will be. So I hope you learned a little bit of something and kind of got an insight to what my group project was like working in a virtual team. And thanks for watching. Bye.